Hi, and welcome to Detours, Understanding Acquired Brain Injury. And today's going to be a little different because I want to talk to you about traumatic brain injury, CTE, and a historical figure. And the thing is, there's a lot of debate about this. The thing is, the historical figure I want to talk to you about is Henry VIII. And a number of neurologists and endocrinologists have looked at his case and said, yeah, he probably suffered from traumatic brain injury, but we're not 100% sure that his erratic behavior stemmed exclusively from brain injury that he suffered. Let's get into this one. I just thought it was fascinating because I do like history and I find it, educational, some of the stuff that happens. So Henry VIII was, when he was a prince, he was second in line to the throne, kind of like, Henry is today, Prince Henry is today, Harry. And like Harry, he was well beloved and he was popular with the people generally. He was affable, friendly, outgoing, and he was described as well-educated, and he was taught. They even had considered him for, strangely of all things, the Catholic priesthood, because if his elder brother would have taken on the throne, they weren't sure what they were going to do with him. The heir and the spare, as it's often termed, when there are two princes in line for the throne. And he was strong, healthy, athletic, which is kind of a strange picture if you know any of the paintings from his time as king. And he would be able to entertain a lot of people because he was a sportsman too. And that sport he loved playing was gridiron football, American football. And he played tackle. No, he didn't. He loved jousting. And those of you who know that jousting is incredibly dangerous. And he would actually ride and face against other horsemen, and they would have lances, and real sharp lances. And the goal with jousting, even in competition, would be to unseat the opposing player and knock them to the ground. And this happened to Henry twice. And the concern was, the first time he was briefly knocked unconscious, but the second time he was knocked out for more than 2 hours in 1536. And they were worried he would die. They took him inside and he didn't respond, and there was no treatment. And after the second injury that he suffered in 1536, they said there were changes to his behavior. And shortly after that, he became king. Shortly after that, his brother died of tuberculosis, or some respiratory infection. They weren't clear. It sounded like it would have been diagnosed as tuberculosis, although again, not clear. And after that had happened, that was when he started to become more quarrelsome, more argumentative. When he started to get a lot of headaches. He'd always had migraines, but his became much more serious. And they said he had esprit de melancholy. Basically, he started showing symptoms of depression also after this second injury. And he also started having problems with his weight. You're familiar with the paintings of him. And issues with mobility and ulcers. One of the things traumatic brain injury can cause is an imbalance in hormones, as you're aware, pituitary and the hypothalamus involved, and can lead you to start to develop these ulcers, and he had them on his legs. The ladies had always described his legs as being well-shaped, and they found them quite attractive. But he started having problems generally with muscle development. And if you have problems with your growth hormone and gonadotropin, this can affect your physical development and your sexual prowess as well. And so it's possible, due to his, if it was serious enough, and with him being unconscious and confused for as long as he was, it is possible that his sexual impulses were affected and his ability maybe even to maintain an erection, which also may explain his problems later with fathering children, because his physicians did describe this in notes. And after this, this is when we start to see him behead his wives, 2 of them. He did not behead all of them, he beheaded 2 of them. And he turned from a defender of the faith, which the Catholic Church had awarded him. This is why we say defender of the faith when it comes to the Queen of England today, or the King of England. We say defender of the faith because Henry VIII had earned that note from the Pope. And he suddenly became angry over the divorce with his first wife, Catherine. And so you start to ask the question, with all these changes in his personality, it would be consistent with a frontal lobe injury, and it also would be consistent with his head injuries. And what's also interesting is with his first injury, where he was only knocked out for a few minutes, it went through the visor and would have hit him here, between the eyes. Your pituitary and hypothalamus, if you trace a line from here back, that's where they lie. And so, actually a little further down, but still right about there. And so you have to ask the question, did that affect his whole body because of where he was hit? Of course, we'll never know. I mean, even buried and preserved as he was, it leaves us to ask that kind of question. But traumatic brain injury affects not just people today, but has an effect on people throughout history. And it has. And brain injury has rewritten history many, many times. And the acts of Henry VIII influenced the course of Protestantism here in the United States and affected, the way we worship, the way we think about things. It affected England's interactions with France and led to changes in our relationships. It led England to develop a bigger navy and Britannia ruling the waves and that kind of thing. And it led to good Queen Bess, Elizabeth I, and her development of Protestantism. And it led to things that rolled on from England from there historically, and it just spread out. And there's so many different ways. And you wonder what other leaders in history have suffered traumatic brain injury. And so it makes you ask that kind of question. And for me, at least, this is one leader where you could definitely point to it and say, yeah, this looks like Henry VIII had brain injury. And so it just would encourage that kind of search through history and to see how this has impacted all of us and such a powerful leader. And so just a note of curiosity. So I hope you have a good day. Thank you very much, and goodbye.